When Josef Mengele was young, just like Adolf Hitler, he was very interested in art as well as music and skiing. Mengele received doctorates in anthropology and medicine. For his anthropology degree, Mengele had studied under Fyodor Molesin, who was a proponent of the pseudoscience of scientific racism, also called biological racism. This is the belief that the human species can be divided into biologically distinct categories and that these categories establish a natural hierarchy of human intelligence, behavior, and worth, which is based off of ethnicity and race. These ideas, which Josef Mengele adopted from his time studying, led to the practice of eugenics. In 1937, Mengele worked as an assistant for a man named Ottmar Freiherr von Verschuer, who was a German geneticist with a particular interest in researching twins, something Mengele would later become very interested in himself. He then officially joined the Nazi Party of Germany in 1937 at age 25 or 26, 4 years after his father had joined, and then joined the Schutzstaffel, a major paramilitary organization under Adolf Hitler, essentially acting as his security guards, in 1938, 3 years after his father joined. Mengele then joined the military in 1940 after the outbreak of World War II, where he climbed the ranks as a medical officer. In this role, Mengele was not at all involved in any of the killings, but was a decorated military officer for his bravery in rescuing 2 German soldiers from a burning tank. Mengele in 1943 then left the military and went back to his job as an assistant to Verschuer at the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute of Anthropology, Human Hereditary, and Eugenics in Berlin. Verschuer recommended that Josef Mengele apply to work at the concentration camp service, so Mengele applied, was accepted, and started his job at Auschwitz in May 1943 as chief medical officer, where his entire legacy changed forever. Some of Mengele's duties were to make weekly visits to the hospital barracks and order prisoners who were still bedridden after 2 weeks to the gas chambers, supervising the administration of the deadly chemicals used for the mass killings in the gas chambers, and sorting incoming prisoners on whether they were fit to work at the camp or should be killed immediately. Both on and off the job, Mengele would go to the new arrival sorting station, also known as the ramp, looking for physicians, pharmacists, or other medical professionals who could help him assist with his research, as well as searching for sets of twins and other groups of people in which he could perform his research and experiments on. Mengele also was awarded during his time at Auschwitz with the War Merit Cross for his gassing of peoples in barracks where epidemics broke out to eliminate them and stop the spread of diseases. Mengele's routine job was just like living for him, as it is for everyone outside, at least select few who find real enjoyment in the work. What really made this position interesting to Mengele, though, was how he now had access to subjects he could experiment on to further science, with hardly any rules or restrictions in Auschwitz. Outside of twins, Mengele had a particular interest in people who had eyes of 2 different colors, dwarves, and other rare physical anomalies. Thanks to the request of his old boss, Verschuer, seen on the right, who he regularly kept in contact with, Mengele was awarded a grant by the German Research Foundation to build a pathology laboratory attached to a crematorium at Auschwitz. One thing was clear from Mengele's time at Auschwitz: he did not have any care for anyone there. He viewed everyone as expendable and only cared about the people insofar as they could help him further his scientific pursuits, as we will see. An example of this was when an outbreak of what is known as Noma, a gangrene of the mouth and face, struck the Romani camp in 1943. Noma primarily only affects malnourished, extremely young children, usually ages 2 to 6. The cause of Noma, although still not fully known today, is when normal bacteria in someone's mouth turns into an infection which cannot be spread. Mengele, with the information at hand, thought that this was a genetic condition that children developed, with the help of a Jewish Auschwitz prisoner who was a pediatrician and professor with the last name Epstein. No, not Jeffrey Epstein, but Berthold Epstein. Mengele looked to develop a treatment for Noma. Mengele administered vitamins and antibiotics to children with Noma, and Mengele saw significant improvement in the children. and his solutions actually appeared to be treating the noma. However, once he saw his treatment was effective, he completely stopped it. Because Mengele had already gotten what he wanted out of the alive ill children, and due to the treatment stopping, the children fell into severe noma again. Mengele then ordered the children with noma to be killed because the children's heads that had the noma and the children's organs could be used for further scientific research on noma and genetics. During Josef Mengele's time at Auschwitz, he has studied as many as 1,000 sets of twins. Some were siblings who passed themselves off as twins, either to avoid being sent to the gas chambers or for the better housing, food provided, and kindness of Mengele. Well, kindness up to the point where them being alive no longer served an interest in his research. An eyewitness testimony claims to have seen Mengele kill 14 twins in a single night, first by injecting EpiPen to induce sleep, and then by injecting their hearts with chloroform. Mengele did various tests like this, where he would inject one twin with a disease to take note of their bodily responses, and transfer it to the other twin via their blood to see the other twin's reactions. If one of the pair of twins died, the other was likely to be killed so that Mengele could have comparative reports about each twin after their deaths. As for people with different eye colors, a condition known as heterochromia, iridium, Mengele would remove their eyes and send them to Verschuer and Karen Magnuson, a scientist who specialized and focused on heterochromia, to be studied. Magnuson also guided Mengele in much of his experiments concerning heterochromia. For example, how Josef Mengele would put adrenaline into a person with heterochromia's eyes. He did this because Magnuson had used adrenaline with rabbits before who had heterochromia 2 or 3 times a day, and it ended up working at making their eyes appear the same color. But unknowingly to Magnuson and Mengele at the time, this only worked because the rabbits had what is known as Horner syndrome, which caused lower pigmentation in one of their eyes due to a rabbit or even a person with Horner syndrome's sympathetic nervous system being damaged. Because of this, there were 0 reported successes in this experiment. One baby is confirmed to have died from this experiment, and several others, mostly children, likely died from a combination of the adrenaline experiments and severe malnutrition at the camp, leading to infections and eventually sepsis. There is also ample evidence that at least some of the test subjects were killed by a lethal injection to harvest the pupils to be examined further in a lab. His experience with dwarfs and people with physical abnormalities included taking physical measurements, drawing blood, extracting healthy teeth, and treatment with unnecessary drugs and x-rays. Many of the victims were sent to the gas chambers after about 2 weeks, and their skeletons were to be sent to Berlin for further study to find out what caused things like dwarfism and other abnormalities. Some of Mengele's most disturbing experiments were those done on pregnant women. It is documented by a Holocaust survivor, Ruth Elias, that Mengele attended the birth of her newborn baby and then forced her to not provide the newborn baby with any food to see how long a newborn could survive without food. Ruth Elias also explains how Josef Mengele would twist women's nipples who he suspected were pregnant to see if they were leaking milk, so could ensure he could perform experiments on as many women as he liked. Additionally, Stanislawa Leszczyńska, who was a prisoner who volunteered to be the Auschwitz camp's midwife, said that at the approximate 3,000 deliveries she attended, more than 2,500 newborns were killed. A few hundred others with blue eyes were sent to orphanages to be indoctrinated, and only 30 infants survived in the care of their mothers. Mengele also had infected multiple pregnant women with typhoid in order to determine whether their children would be born with the infection too, along with many other experiments of the sort to thousands of women. Other things Mengele would do was harvest organs of victims without anesthesia, cause the forced sterilization mostly in children through castration and surgical procedures, not because Mengele did not want the Jews to repopulate, like was the goal of many other Nazis at the time, but so he could observe how their developmental growth changed due to the castrations, and how children would go through puberty with them. There are other atrocities that Mengele may have committed, but the evidence to show it are weak, such as a popular story that 2 twins were sewn together to create conjoined twins, which is likely untrue since there is no evidence of this happening and no scientific reason that Mengele doing this would accomplish. Since Mengele thought that the twins being born conjoined would be genetic and as a result of a birth defect caused by the ethnicity of their parents or her race. Other assertions about Mengele's experiments that lack evidence are that he forced incest, conducted sex change operations, and that he surgically connected the urinary tract of a 7-year-old girl to her own colon. Long story short, due to incompetence by the United States government and military, Josef Mengele had escaped to South America, a hotbed for Nazis due to South American support of Nazi ideology. At the time, he worked as a carpenter and an illegal abortion provider. For his last 20 years, Mengele had multiple fake identities as he had worked day and night to avoid capture by Israeli National Intelligence Agency, who was looking for Mengele in South America so that he could be brought in to justice. In the end, they never did find Mengele, but the stress of always being on the run and constant fear of being caught led to worsening mental and physical health of Josef Mengele until he died at the age of 67 from a stroke while swimming in the Atlantic Ocean and drowning. Mengele did such a good job of hiding his identity, it was not until 6 years after his death that it was discovered that Mengele was actually the person who died in that ocean, after a detailed autopsy, and that it was not his alias, Wolfgang Gerhard, who was dead. Wisely choose who you look up to and take direction from. Mengele's academic and work career were filled with people who had a belief that the physical attributes and characteristics of different people made them more or less valuable, and therefore more or less deserving of fair treatment in life. Every human life should be treated and respected equally and fairly both under the law and on an individual basis. A system of ethics not based on the foundation that humans have an innate value lead to atrocities like the Holocaust and the slave trade. Also that the ends don't justify the means. Mengele, throughout the inhumane treatment of his human lab rats, was justified by furthering science and finding the truth about mankind. Although it is not known that Mengele thought this way, it is also very possible that Mengele rationalized his role at Auschwitz as morally acceptable because if he didn't do it, someone else would have. Just because something is bad is going to be done regardless of if you do it or not, that does not take away someone's personal culpability if they are willing to be that very person who does the wicked deed. Lastly, like Mengele, you can quickly lose sight of how you treat others when you become hyper-fixated on something. Mengele didn't see anything wrong with killing those people, who could, within their body, have potentially groundbreaking findings for science, or putting people through mentally and or physically torturous times. Since Mengele was solely focused on science, with absolutely no regard to those he was experimenting on, and nothing else at the time. In conclusion, carefully consider what kind of people you follow, and make time to evaluate the actions you take, even when hyperfixated on a topic or goal. If you like this video, check out some of my other videos below, and also make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and do all that cool stuff. And as always, I'll see you next time. Godspeed.